All right, welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. Now, new research from Grant Thornton that was released last week reveals that women in Africa are more likely to be blocked from reaching business leadership positions by gender bias than anywhere else in the world. Now, gender bias in the workplace is just one of the forms of sexism that is manifested daily all over the world, actually. Earlier on the show, we played a collection of experiences of sexism and everyday sexism, in fact, that our reporters gathered when they went out on the streets of Johannesburg, asking people to share their thoughts, their opinions and their experiences of sexism. And as it is Women's Month, where such issues are given more scrutiny, we're now joined in studio by Mr Mbuyiselo Botha, Sonke Gender Justice's Media and Government Liaison Officer, and Professor Bonita, Meyersfeld, Director of the Center for Applied Legal Studies at Wits University, to speak to us about sexism and related issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you.
Thank you.
Let's now first discuss it. You know, I was speaking a little bit earlier to another expert in this field from the Gender Commission, and we spoke about how women in every level have certain challenges. And we would assume that perhaps if you are a higher manager, that you don't face issues of sexism or issues of patriarchy and the like. But simply bearing children can be a hindrance to your career development. Perhaps you will miss out on a promotion because they're thinking, oh, you're going to have a child in a year or two and it's going to be a liability for us. Don't promote this one. Or women are so emotional. You know, they're not logical thinkers. Don't promote her. Do we still see a prevalence of that, do you think, in corporate South Africa?
Absolutely. I think we see it across the board, not only in corporate South Africa, in government, in the academy. And the assumption is still based on a kind of generalization about women because of their sex. The idea is that because you reproduce or because you have a child, all sorts of non-biological considerations are associated with that biology. So you get the classic sort of sexist stereotype that women aren't good at directions, that women aren't good at mathematics. And this is a fiction, this is a lie. But it's developed over time because socially we've acculturated ourselves to believe in those fictions. And they're exactly the same as the fictions around race, for example. As Verwoerd infamously said, a black child only ever needs to learn how to lay a brick. They do not need to learn how to maths or science. And it's a similar type of fiction around biology, physicality, that is not rooted in anything real. And that's still what we need to get over, especially in the workplace.
Let's talk now beyond the boardroom and go to your bedroom or the courtroom or the streets or wherever else we see sexism manifesting. The culture that we have in our country and perhaps even the world at large is that women have to belong to somebody. So I'm the wife of a person or the daughter of somebody else, and that I'm not an individual. Let's speak about how we go about changing that. That's been entrenched over centuries, if not as old as time. The culture of sexism, of patriarchy, of misogyny. How do we overcome?
Look, and it's not going to be easy. We must not lie to ourselves because, as you rightly point out, these are entrenched. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. I think we have to start, and really seriously, I mean, at schools, you know, at basic entry level where you have, I mean, at crèches, you know. Imagine what would happen if you have men who work at crèches, that young boys and girls grow up understanding that, you know, it's okay to do the so-called soft type of things. So I'm just saying that, and as a country, the whole world, these are things that we would have to contend with for many, many ages to come, so that we do not create an impression that, you know, we can just, within a wink of an eye, you will see change. I think there's lots of work that needs to be done, but it starts in small places. I mean, there's a flagship from Sonke that I love, the One Man Can. That, I mean, at a very, very early age, that I have a responsibility to do certain things, to say certain things, you know, and they may be small, but, you know, gradually they will build up. We would find a situation where our society would be a different society. Yeah.
Now, let me play devil's advocate for a moment or two here. I sometimes battle with this notion of, you know, equality between the sexes. There are differences. It should not be a hierarchy. It's not one is better than the other, but there are differences. Perhaps that men are historically stronger or faster than women or whatever you may be. So even in the biology, there are differences. So how do we then work around those differences to say we are equal in terms of value, even though perhaps we're different in gender?
So I think the first is to interrogate what those differences are. Are those differences real? So you use the example of strength. Well, there's certainly some men who are stronger than some women, but there are also very many women who will be stronger than very many men. And so we need to interrogate why we believe that. We see this, for example, in the mining sector. Many, many women working underground who are as capable as many of the men physically who are working underground. So we need to interrogate first, are those differences real or are they ascribed by society? And the real question, at least for me, is how do we achieve equality of our potential to flourish? In every single individual, there will be certain capacities and capabilities. You may be an up-and-coming, amazing, brilliant mathematician, or a chef, or a caregiver. And we should be able to exploit those characteristics to thrive as individuals, irrespective of our race and certainly irrespective of our sex or class. And the same applies to men. There are very many men out there who would be delighted to be the caregiver, who have the talent to be a domestic worker, to take care of the home. But that's foreclosed to him because of these gender stereotypes. And similarly, there's so many women.
I mean, the best chefs in the world are men.
Well, that's also interesting because the best paid chefs in the world are men.
Yes,
it gets deeper.
That also needs to change as well.
Deeper.
Yeah, that also needs to be changed because a lot of women do what we call unpaid work, that's unrecognized. You know, but I think, Bonita, I agree with you that, I mean, these ascribed roles, in fact, there's not even a scientific evidence that because we are not born with them, they are ascribed. These are social constructions. These are things that society gives them to us.
I want to touch on the remuneration for a second. Men are proven to be paid more than their female counterparts for doing the same work. But then research has found that men are more aggressive in demanding that they be paid what they're worth. And that if you ask a woman, how much would you like to receive, perhaps that we have this gratitude mentality where we're like, oh, you know, what you will give me is fine, I'll take that. And we're not...
An offer.
Yeah, we'll you know, make me an offer. Like I said earlier to you, you know, how many cows am I worth? I said, make me an offer and we'll take it from there, you know.
I'm sure you're worth more than just the materiality.
I mean, exactly. So let's speak about that. Are we valuing ourselves enough to say, this is what I'm worth, and I'm not going to negotiate anything less than that?
Well, I think there are two components. The first is the fact that worldwide, women earn, on average, 18% less than men for the same work. In certain industries in South Africa, it remains between 2 and 5% less. Same work, same qualifications, sometimes better qualifications. So that's partly due to the established kind of valuation of women versus men, but it's also a acculturated and inculcated notion that women should be more demure. It's what's considered socially appropriate, that you should not be overly aggressive, right? As soon as a woman asserts herself, she's aggressive. Right. And this is considered to be a non-compliance with that gendered norm of femininity. So what we really need to see is an ability for women to negotiate and a space for women to negotiate their salaries, to negotiate their promotions, their place in the workspace without feeling like they're compromising on some predetermined gendered social role. So certainly I think, reluctance of a lot of women to really commercialize their value and to translate their value into a commercialized remuneration. That is, I think, still a lesson that we need to be taught and that we need to learn as both men and women.
But you also need to change at the top, Ayanda. I mean, I don't understand if the majority of citizens of the world, or South Africa in particular, are women. Why is it that those demographics don't find themselves reflected? I mean, that's what the president spoke about yesterday, that there are lots of challenges. And we know that, I mean, we have best, capable women. Why is it that they don't only reach the ceiling?
Are we emasculating men and turning our women into men, which is one school of thought when it comes to feminism?
Definitely not. I mean, you raised the point in Mbuyiselo about numbers. But if you look at the number game in South Africa, the similar question could be asked about race. Right? 90% of this population is black, and yet almost 90% of the wealth is held by about 1% of this population, most of whom are white. And there's a history of apartheid around gender. And that's what we need to see is the deconstruction of those structures that do perpetuate inequality. And I don't think we're emasculating, but I do think we're challenging norms and assumptions of power.
Because, in fact, the evidence show, the emasculation, these are, I think, perceptions, because, in fact, it is still us men in the majority of the most important, positions in our country. So, the thinking, and I have never come across someone who says, this chapter and verse, that it proves that because of post-democracy, men have been emasculated. In fact, it could be a backlash that is more, I think, sometimes ideological. There's not been evidence.
This is the part of my job that I absolutely loathe. We've run out of time just as we're getting into the thick of things. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a debate that we simply cannot exhaust in about 5-6 minutes. So we're hoping to bring more focus, and not only during August, because these are issues that are faced throughout the year. So I'm hoping, can I convince you to stay with us, and maybe we can steal some time a little bit later to discuss this further, ne? Yes, women taking charge, definitely. I'm rearranging the show around Women's Month and women's issues. Do stay with us. We'll try and continue with this conversation a bit later. Stay with us. Thank you.